You're listening to KZSC's Voces, Críticas, Critical Voices. I am your producer and host, Silvana Falcón. Today I'm here with Robin Treen of the San Jose Museum of Art and Donna Conwell of the Lucas Art Residency at Montalvo. And later in the show, we're going to be talking to Agustina Woodgate and Stephanie Sherman of RadioEE.net. Robin Treen is the Special Projects Coordinator at the San Jose Museum of Art. Since 2012, Robin has worked between curatorial, education, and marketing and has led SJMA's successful partnership activities associated with Around the Table Food Community Creativity in 2014 with 43 community partners. That is not an error. 43 community partners. She also worked on Border Cantos, which some of you may have known about. UC Santa Cruz was a partner in that. 41 community partners for that collaboration, and the current collaboration, which is why I wanted Robin to come on the show, is to talk about new terrains, migration, and mobility. This currently has, I believe, close to 40 partners. Amazing. And Treen has been serving the South Bay arts community for over 25 years. Donna Conwell is the Associate Curator at the Montalvo Arts Center in Saratoga. The Montalvo Arts Center is a member-supported nonprofit institution whose mission is to engage people in the creative process, acting as a catalyst for exploring the arts, unleashing creativity, and advancing different cultural and cross-cultural perspectives. Welcome, Donna and Robin, to the first part of our conversation here on KZSC's Voces Críticas. Robin, let's start with you. Tell us about the vision for New Terrains, Migration and Mobility, and about some of your institutional collaborators.
Thank you very much for having us today, Silvana. It's great to be here. New Terrains, Mobility and Migration is the third large community-wide multidisciplinary collaborative project that the San Jose Museum of Art has initiated. As you said earlier, Around the Table Food Creativity Community was our first one. And then we did Border Cantos. Both of those were centered around an exhibition that appeared at the museum. And that's sort of where the idea came from. This time, we decided to do something a little bit different. So we collected together a dozen or so of our previous partners, and we developed the theme for this one collaboratively. So everybody was very interested in the subjects of migration, mobility, accessibility, identity, community, what all of those things mean. And I think lots of people right now, particularly in this area, feel like we've entered a new terrain on a national basis. And so it seemed like a natural outgrowth of Border Cantos to pursue this topic. And so New Terrains could cover just about anything. As you said, we're up to, I think, close to 40 partners for this. And our partners range from Watsonville to San Francisco, and they go all through the South Bay, and they range from service organizations to cultural and arts organizations and to some other kind of far-flung ideas too. The SETI Institute is partnering with us because, after all, if the final frontier is not a new terrain, I don't know what is. So we have lots of partners. All the partners are doing some kind of project that interprets the broad themes of the idea of new terrains, mobility, and migration.
When you first started thinking about institutional collaborators, like, what is the first step? I'm thinking, like, it's amazing that you were able to get so much wide interest.
In this case, like I said, we developed it collaboratively with a handful of partners to start with, and then we just start reaching out into the community to other partners through networking primarily. We don't curate any of the programs. We don't turn anyone away. Everybody is welcome. It's a broad church. It's a wide, wide church. We typically reach out through networks, I guess, and usually people are pretty interested in doing this kind of thing. There's lots of benefits to partnering with us and for the partners to partner with each other. There's a lot of community exposure and networking and lots of opportunities to be had, but it's also a way for institutions to share resources, to create new models of relevancy in the community. I think the cross-disciplinary aspects of it are also very interesting because, as you said, and as Donna will talk about, it's about self-expression, and everybody needs to connect with that self-expressive part of themselves. I think additionally right now, too, again, in this political climate, everybody feels very strongly about standing together, and I think that's a really important part, and finding common ground.
Absolutely. Donna, tell us about the Lucas Artist Residency at the Montalvo Arts Center and about your specific partnership with New Terrains.
Yeah, so we are based on a 175-acre public park and private estate, and we're part of the Montalvo Arts Center. We're one of the oldest artist residency programs in the country, and we serve about 100 artists a year that are coming to us from all around the world, from all different disciplines. So we have composers, visual artists, literary artists, we have culinary fellows. Most of the artists come to us through a jury nomination process, and we make selections every 3 years. Agustina Woodgate was selected as part of our last visual artist selection. And when she first came to us in the residency, she came with her collaborator, Sherman. What tends to happen at the residency is we get talking with the artists around the table about the ideas and projects that they're working on. And they started talking about this project they've been doing for 7 years now called radioee.net, where they travel all around the world doing these pop-up radio broadcasts, always on the move and always about some aspect of mobility. So when Robin came to me with this idea for new terrains and the idea of mobility, it seemed a very natural fit to then return back to Agustina and Stephanie and sort of see if they would be interested in getting involved. And what I should say in the context of the residency is for many, many years, residencies were seen more as a sort of time and space model where artists would go spend time up in their studios, quietly working away, doing their painting or whatever. But I would say in the last 10 years or so, that model has really changed. And I think we're part of that. And what we're trying to do is provide that opportunity for artists, but also support them through our commissioning program to develop and present new works. And a particular focus of what we do is trying to support artists to do works in the public sphere in some capacity, either in our public park or in the Greater Bay Area, and work that can sort of spark and stimulate public conversation about issues that are important to us all.
And so how long are these residencies?
The residency typically is 3 months, and the artist can take it all in one chunk, or they can split it up over 3 years, and that tends to often work quite well, because that means that they can come for a month, kind of get to know the area and the community, network a little bit, figure out what might be possible, and then go away. And then when they come back, they can come back with ideas and proposals of things that they might want to do. From an administrative perspective, it's quite challenging because you have these 100 artists coming and going. But from our mission, which is really to kind of deeply support artists and their work, I think it's really been very fruitful and beneficial.
It sure sounds like it. Robin, now I had mentioned to you before we came on the air about how I see some as this work that you're doing, these partnerships that you're cultivating as really about a public education mission, as really being public education work. And I wondered if you also see these organic, often very fruitful, generative partnerships that are emerging as about really educating the public.
I think there's a lot of public education aspect to it. And because we've done this more than once, when we go back to our partners, we find that those partnerships and the ideas do grow and change and generate both organically and in response to things that we've done before, things that they've done before, and they partner up with each other and work together as well. So yes, I do think there's a strong public education component to it, and it gives people an opportunity to find out about things they wouldn't normally come across in their day-to-day lives, things that have surprising connections to each other, and make connections. And the great thing, I think, about the partnerships is that they deepen over time. Donna and I have worked a lot together on the Radio EE project, and so that relationship has really grown and deepened as well. So that's really great.
Donna, soon we're going to be joined by radioee.net to learn more about Autopiloto, this commission project through the Lucas Artist Program. And in describing this work, I really want us to talk about this really beautiful quote you had in the materials about radioee.net. And you said, quote, radioee.net and their new work, Autopiloto, reflects our belief that artists are important catalysts for igniting meaningful and urgent social conversations about the issues shaping our collective future. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit more about the meaningful and urgent social conversations that we need to be having and that artists really need to be leading for us.
Well, you know, I think artists are citizens of the world and they care passionately about issues that we all care about. And I see that every day at the residency. And I think to bring people into a conversation through art that wouldn't necessarily be involved. And I think we've seen some really compelling examples. Even this past year, we had an artist from Brazil, Marilla Dardot, who is an immigrant now based in Portugal. And she joined us in the summer and she did several workshops with refugee community groups to create a series of flags representing their country and some aspect of it that they missed. And we planted these flags. There were about close to the 50 of them on the front lawn of Montalvo Arts Center. And sort of as part of that, there were many conversations that happened with the people who participated that they found deeply enriching and rewarding given this particular political climate that we're living in now. But also the conversations that were sparked around the installation, people, hikers in our park, just wandering around and coming across these visual symbols and having a moment to kind of reflect. So I think through the medium of art, it's a kind of way into talking about very complicated topics that sometimes you can kind of easily separate yourself into a partisan position and put up walls and not really want to talk about things. But I think the arts have a really amazing capability to kind of bridge those differences and bring people to talk about these things.
Yeah, and sometimes you can only do it through art.
Yeah, and sometimes they're wrestling with ideas that we haven't even been able to verbalize or articulate to ourselves. So we're kind of thinking this all through together.
Well, thanks you guys for starting us off on this conversation. That was Donna Conwell from the Montalvo Arts Center in Saratoga. She's the associate curator there. And you were also listening to Robin Treen, and she is the special projects coordinator at the San Jose Museum of Art. I want to thank them so much for starting off our conversation and thinking about the role of arts in these conversations. And entering the studio now will be Agustina Woodgate and Stephanie Sherman, and they are of RadioEE.net. RadioEE.net is a nomadic, online, translingual radio station that hosts 24-hour broadcast events about mobility and movement. Their broadcasts are transmitted while on the move, literally on the move, opening a channel for local conversation, music, storytelling, and sonic experiments shared with 5,000 plus global listeners. RadioEE.net uses language integration rather than translation, moving seamlessly between languages. Part sound publication, part radio show, part podcast. Each broadcast generates a sonic portrait of a place in time. RadioEE.net's past broadcasts have addressed such issues as water and global climate change from the deck of a boat, navigating the Miami River and South Florida canals, and the future of cycling as transportation from a motor-powered 10-person bicycle. Very creative, a very creative group, as you can see. RadioEE.net's most recently participated in the 4th Istanbul Design Biennial, where their broadcasts explored language and movement from an iconic street vendor pushcart. Thank you so much for joining us, Agustina and Stephanie, to the show, and thanks for joining the conversation. Maybe, Stephanie, we'll start with you. How did you get involved with Radio EE?
Well, hi, everyone. Augustina and I had been already collaborating for about 3 years, and I studied English, and I'm always interested in language and storytelling, and Agustina is native Spanish speaker, and so her English, I often found it quite poetic because she would say all these things totally incorrectly, but it actually meant a lot more or had a different kind of meaning the way she spoke. And so we found in those mistakes this shared interest in language and language learning, and we wrote a grant to a space called Elsewhere that I ran, and she had been a resident and longtime collaborator of, and started this radio in the window there, and that was 7-8 years ago now. And it started about really just a project of seeing what you could do with a computer. Is it possible to run an online station? And what does it mean to activate the airwaves? And from there, everything evolved.
And so how long have you guys been working together then?
Hello, this is Agustina.
Hi, Agustina.
Thank you for having us.
Of course.
We've been working 10 years together, 7 with the radio, but it's not the only thing we do together.
I imagine it's not the only thing you do together. Why don't you tell us about what else you guys do together?
Well, we collaborate in each other's practices quite a bit, yeah. And also this radio puts us in plenty of life adventures, keeps us on the road, so many unexpected workings.
Do you have a fun story you want to share about one of those unexpected life moments?
Wow. I mean, the Amazon was pretty epic. Yeah.
Comes to mind for me.
I can't. So tell us about that.
So last year we went to, around September, beginning of September, we traveled to the Amazon, the Brazilian jungle sector, and that was in the state of Pará, a village called Fortlandia, built by Mr. Henry Ford in 1927. And it took us about 3 days to get there, different modes of transportation. We finally got there. We were there for about 3 weeks. We had been working with different local activators and different local organizers over WhatsApp for about a year. So they were waiting for us. When we get there, it was pretty magical. I mean, the whole thing was amazing. We set up the radio in the abandoned Ford factory for 36 hours. We broadcasted the longest marathon we've done up to date. All local voices. The broadcast there was in half Brazilian, Spanish, Portuñol, how they call it, and English.
So how many people were part of that experience?
So it was myself and Agustina and two collaborators that we love working with, Sebastian Belver and Hernan Woodgate, Agustina's brother. And then we had a group of 4 Brazilian sound collaborators, an anthropologist, a radio activist, a public curator.
And then also 2 local members working very closely with us. But then once we arrived there, it was just the entire village.
But I will say the adventure moments of the radio is when you find yourself wading home in the Tapajos River with the radio in your backpack on your head to try with a full moon and a giant mountain of macacas screeching. And that really feels like being alive.
I was going to say, yeah, that is an experience you probably will never forget. So, Stephanie, tell us about Autopiloto, this marathon radio transmission that you guys are going to be doing very soon. You're going to be moving in this semi-autonomous vehicle throughout the Bay Area. Tell us about how this project was conceptualized, what you guys were thinking, who you want to be talking to in the Bay Area.
Yeah, so mobility and movement are our general themes, and then we develop a specific concept depending on where we're going and the issues there. Obviously, transportation in the Bay Area is this incredibly complex challenge that a lot of people are working on trying to solve, and there's a lot of obstacles along the way. There's a lot of possibility and what do I call it, tech optimisms. Then, as we know, complex systems are complex for many reasons. And so we were invited by the Montalvo Arts Center and the Lucas Artist Program to come and think about a project, and we decided that autopilot and autopilot mode would be a great theme for this broadcast, and that the vehicle was obviously the main context in which this transportation system is being developed, but we're thinking about autopilot mode far more generally. So we're thinking about how people go into autopilot mode, how animals deploy, what a weather system is when it's in control or not in control of itself or its system. So we're really thinking about how these system complexities work together. And then the broadcast will be November 15th and 16th from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. And we'll be looping the Bay Area. So the first day more in the South Bay, around San Jose, of course, going around, and then the second day up through Oakland and the North Bay a bit, and then coming back down. And we are in the process of this incredible production of coordinating guests and times and traffic, which makes speculating on where to be at any moment incredibly challenging.
Oh, I imagine. Agustina, who are you hoping to talk to as part of Radio EE's Autopiloto?
As Stephanie was mentioning, we are expanding the topic across different peripheries, coming through it in different axes. So what's most exciting is that these are all local voices. And when we say local voices, also sounds and local landscapes. So we have all locals, musicians, composers also thinking about different ways of addressing this topic. I'm excited about the SETI because I'm into space. That's exciting. Interesting perspective they will add to it. And we really have a lot. The Strout also, that's great. Some really great dancing moves.
The San Jose Strut. She calls it the Strout. But this will be our first radio broadcast with interviewing dancers. There's a popping group called the San Jose Strut, and that segment's going to be, we think, called Flow State. So we'll be talking about how dance and movement, autopilot mode for the dancer.
And so part of what you just said to Agustina is the issue of sound, right? Sound is part of the story. So how do you think about sound in this broadcast? What kind of stories or sounds tell us that sometimes maybe we don't miss because we are on autopilot?
Totally. Well, so for example, we are in conversation with Arup, the people from Arup. They have an incredible 3D or 4D sound system where they have been also doing different tests and prototypes on the impacts of sound in the city infrastructure, highways, even construction. Like when one builds a building, a high-rise, sound is a major component of this. So this is incredibly interesting to us, of course. Composers, actually, for example, one of our composers has been exploring the idea of gathering the data of the traffic jam and creating music using this data, sonificating. What is it?
It's sonifying, but sonificating is fine.
That works.
I mean, there's so much. What else do we have? We also have a radio show. It's a radio drama, which is also adds an interesting texture to the whole journey. And the musicians have been very sensitive to the idea that we're going to be in the road and are actually interested in really embracing the highway, the psychic, the hypnotic state, and bringing those already existing sounds in. We do in every broadcast kind of have a specific gadget that we bring with us. So, for example, from the one that we had in the boat, we had purchased an underwater microphone so that at certain points we will just stamp the microphone under the water and just really bring the ocean. So here it would be somewhat the same idea. There's different ways in which we are wanting to also make the car speak. So we have to get acquainted with it and find out if it has a voice and if it's going to tell us when it turns on into autopilot mode and things like this.
So, Stephanie, we just have another minute, and I wanted to know if you could summarize what are you hoping to capture in this moment, right? You've got this November 15th and 16th date. What are you hoping is the result of Autopiloto in terms of what kinds of conversations and things?
Yeah, I think it's about this complex ecosystem at this moment in time. Sometimes when you drive around here, you can't tell whether you're in the past or the future. And so I think an audio portrait of this moment in transition and the people that are dealing with it and contending with it from very social and political angles to technology and development angles to musicians who are really thinking about the poetics of this.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much for coming and helping us finish off this conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Stephanie and Agustina from Radio EE. You will find them throughout the Bay Area on November 15th and 16th, so keep a lookout. Thanks you guys so much for coming on.
Ciao.
Ciao.